Whether it was a nature-made mistake, as she suggested, or not, the truth is that Coccinelle became who she had always wanted, a real woman inside and outside, after she subjected herself to a surgical procedure. It's quite a lovely story behind one of the most glamorous icons that have emerged from the French entertainment scene. She was cute, brave, perhaps with a heart of gold, and like millions of her fans, I'm also glad she made it and became a pioneer image in the transgender struggle. What made Coccinelle's clothing illegal? Once upon a time a child was born with natural beauty and a mark of greatness. The child grew up in anxiety and disgust while trying to ascertain her true gender, an acceptable identity. She began a life shrouded in difficulty, discrimination, and error, perhaps made by nature. But being a brave kid that has gotten to the right stage in life where everyone expects her to decide for herself, teenage Coccinelle has to decide who she wants to be. This is, of course, the background of this narration, which happened to be the true story of one of the most legendary transgender celebrity icons that history has ever recorded. Her name is Jacqueline Charlotte du Fresnoy, born as Jacques Charles and known professionally as Coccinelle. She is a beautiful and highly talented career woman. She was one of those glamorous French ladies who ruled the Paris entertainment scene in the 1950s and through the 1960s. She was no doubt a wonderful personality, a remarkable vocalist, and one that has influenced and continues to inspire generations. But that is not the end of her story, because there is more to her unique image and entertainment stardom that would interest you. The behind-the-scenes story of the life and time of this great icon is one of those tales you can only see in the movies, but she made them a reality. What happened to Coccinelle, you might be asking? Coccinelle is the first French citizen to undergo gender reassignment surgery. She became a trendsetter in France and is still loved by millions for her beautiful contributions to the cause of humanity to this day. And at this time you might also be asking, how did this come about? Beautiful Coccinelle was born in Paris, France on the 23rd of August 1931 as an infant boy at 66 Rue Notre-Dame de Nazareth in the 3rd arrondissement of Paris City. She was raised around the Temple district and was privileged to be born into a modest family and got somewhat supportive and attentive parenting. And as things turned out to be, perhaps at a tender age, Coccinelle exhibited her inner womanliness by wearing dresses and wigs. By instinct or whatever, Coccinelle knew about her transgender inclination at a very young age, because she once told fans that as early as age 4 she had identified her true gender identity, and of course no one could see what she was seeing. As a boy aged 4 I knew I was different, she stated. I was a girl, but nobody could see it. For little Coccinelle it was not a time to start asking questions that would never be answered by anyone around her. The reason she just chose what suits her nature, deciding to dress like a female. So she grew up with an inner feeling and desire to be a woman, and continued to explore that aspect of nature through her teenage years. Coincidentally, the Temple neighbourhood of Paris where Coccinelle experienced childhood is closer to what is today known as a flourishing area with homosexual nightlife, the Marais, so it was not difficult to find friends then because of the related sexual incline of people around her, which was why when she took up her first job as an early adult, her family was worried. When she started working in a hairdressing salon, her father was regrettably worried that Charles, his son, might become a homosexual through the job. Because of her usual dress pattern, especially her beloved red party dress with black polka dots, friends nicknamed her Coccinelle, interpreted as Ladybug. That name stuck with her throughout her teenage years and into adulthood until she adopted it as a saleable brand, and in no time she picked interest in entertainment and soon began performances as she joined the vibrant cabaret arena as a drag queen, otherwise referred to as a female impersonator, based on the trend at the time. With her natural talent, it seems the sky was her limit as she grew in popularity with the entertainment scene. The first career decision she took was to adopt her nickname Coccinelle as her stage name. She appeared first on stage as a transgender showgirl in 1953 at Chez Madame Arthur in Paris, where she performed the role of a young ingenue in the song Premier Rendezvous. She was applauded and envied as an embodiment of beauty and talent as she quickly upgraded by linking with the popular music hall Le Carrousel de Paris. It was among the city's most popular nightclubs that included varieties of transgender performers, which had opened for business in 1947. She performed frequently at the nightclub alongside other famous trans women. Here, Coccinelle's audiences cherished her talent just like her blonde bombshell appearance, which observers say looked more like that of legendary Hollywood sex symbols like Brigitte Bardot or even Marilyn Monroe. There was even more uniqueness to her personality as she gradually became a known nightclub singer and stage performer, which would mark the beginning of her great career. Coccinelle's self-awareness and understanding of her identity were beyond her fame as a performer, because all through this period of career stardom she felt a strong need to identify with womanhood, rather than what everyone knows her as. This gorgeous lady had a real sense of feminine fashion and elegance, and had easily discovered her talent in the performing arts, especially as a singer. It fortunately became the foundation that patterned her career, with critics agreeing that she may have drawn inspiration from the above-mentioned Hollywood sex symbols to develop her trendy style. The fact that she entered showbiz as a trans woman at Chez Madame Arthur, where her mother was also a flower vendor, provides a hint of a lady that had much support from her mother. She continued to rise in popularity through the 1950s. Amidst career stardom and information available to her as a celebrity, Coccinelle decided to do something about her gender. Everything changed in 1958, the year she took a destiny move and made history as France's first trans celebrity to reassign her gender through surgical procedures. And in case you didn't quite understand or just wondering how that process played out, recall that in 1958 it was illegal in France for a man to wear clothing that belonged to a woman, and vice versa. It was quite frustrating and humiliating for the likes of Coccinelle. So, before we could say Jack Robinson, Coccinelle had embarked on a gender reassignment trip to Casablanca, so she could give herself the true identity that she has always considered to be an error probably made by her creator. What do I know about creation? That historic event took place at a clinic in Casablanca, Morocco, and before this time she had smartly changed her name from Jacques Charles to Jacqueline Charlotte. And immediately after the operation, Dr. Georges Bourreau said to her, "Bonjour, mademoiselle," and as she reported, "I knew it had been a success." Triumphantly, Coccinelle told fans that Dr. Bourreau rectified the mistake nature had made, and I became a real woman, on the inside as well as the outside. The surgery was a revolutionary point in her life, and many others of her kind. Her personal life became exciting, just like her career, and she was happy about it. Coccinelle did not hide her joy when she returned to the country, as she told fans how the change of her gender means a lot to her. "I was the first French person to have a sex change." As incredible as this may sound, it's her true story. "It meant I could no longer be arrested by the Vice Squad for impersonating a man," she joyfully declared. Coccinelle is one of those brave French ladies who are ready to dance where even the angels fear to tread. That was why she woke up one morning and decided to walk through a path none of her kinsmen ever tried to venture, and subsequently opened the way for all those who came after her. It no doubt left some of her critics wondering and asking how a simple decision to make queer history had turned her life around for good, and not just for her but for thousands of others in her homeland. Critics described Coccinelle's action as a victory for her society. Recall that before this time she had lived in fear, just like many French women who could still be arrested for cross-dressing, following existing French law since 1800 that made it illegal for a woman to wear trousers. Even though the later generation of French women had ignored this law, it was not until recently that the law was officially repealed. Not too long after, her news went viral. Coccinelle became an international figure and media sensation. She gathered millions of followers, mainly in Europe, South America, and other parts of the globe. what looked like a personal development effort became an open door for more fame. Observers said the moment the press heard about the success of Coccinelle's procedure, the atmosphere was agog for the rising young star. Her cabaret show got international recognition as she toured countries and began making notable film appearances. Remarkably, Europa di Nota, Los Viciosos and Dias de Ver Color, her singing performance also skyrocketed, as was showcased in her review Cherchez la Femme, plus her recordings. After appearing in Europa di Notte, directed by Alessandro Blasetti, her popularity made an Italian lead singer, Guido Agosti, dedicate her single she titled Coccinelle to her, though that move had provoked widespread dismay and debate. She continued to do her shows. After appearing in the Argentine thriller movie Los Viciosos, she established her place as the first French trans woman to become an international superstar. In line with her popularity trend at the time, Bruno Cocatrix would splash her name in red letters on the facade of Paris Olympia for her 1963 review, Cherchez la Femme. The show ran for about 7 months from 1963 and ended in 1964. While her public image was favoured by that epic change of status, her private life was also enhanced. It was as if her life was swimming from glory to glory. Not too long, the men were queuing to take her home in marriage, and before we know it, Coccinelle fell in love with sports writer Francis Bonnet. The duo got married in 1960, but before then a lot of preparation was made. Since her marriage would take place in a Catholic church and her name had changed from Jacques to Jacqueline, she was billed for a baptism, which is rare in the history of the church. That historic Catholic wedding paved the way in the country for transgender people to marry in French law, just as she was also the first transgender person in France to legally marry. Recall that this kind of marriage was also prohibited in France until recently. Interestingly, the fact that Coccinelle's first marriage took place in the church after she was accepted as a woman made it concrete and outstanding for all to acknowledge. The church wedding broke both legal and religious records. Talking about that momentous epoch, Coccinelle told fans that before marriage, the only requirement was that I had to be baptized again as Jacqueline. Coccinelle's life and time story was no doubt among the foundational base of the homosexual rights movement in France within the 20th century, even though many still considered her the pioneer of the community. While the impact of the wedding may not be forgotten so easily, with all its hullabaloo, her marital life with her husband was not a happy one, because the initial joy was short-lived, and about 2 years after they were already divorced. Coccinelle met and married for the second time the Paraguayan dancer Mario Costa. The marriage was a better combination as the couple lived together for over 15 years before they were naturally separated following Costa's death in 1977. Jacqueline would go on to marry her last husband, a transgender man identified as Thierry Wilson. Together the couple established the Devenir Femme, meaning to become woman organisation, which is dedicated to helping transgender individuals seek gender validation surgery. Coccinelle also assisted in creating the Centre for Aid, Research and Information for Transsexuality and Gender Identity. That is the climax of the story of this great lady, who proved to humanity that existing queer does not mean you can't be something useful for yourself or decide the kind of life you want to live, in a world where you live and thrive with people who want you to be humiliated and removed from the surface of the earth. Even though she left humanity several years ago, many still enjoy Coccinelle's act in film and listen to her songs as a source of inspiration. And while her story is typical to that of the average transgender individual of her time, her life was unique because she learned and achieved something most of them failed to accomplish. She was able to effect a change in her life and society with her talent plus her resolve, which must have included moral support from family and friends. That was it. Jacqueline Charlotte de Fresnoy, the beautiful lady you know as Coccinelle, is today engraved in the history books, not just because of those favourite mink coats and fascinating shows she did, but for her love for humanity. Coccinelle died from a stroke in Marseille in 2006, but before then she had released her memoir in 1987, in which she narrated her struggles and triumph in life. Coccinelle's story would not be complete without a cautious mention of other iconic trans women such as April Ashley and Bambi, the Algerian-born Marie Pierre Pruvot, who was a lifelong friend to her. Back then, at famous Le Carrousel de Paris, a place that was more of a freedom arena for feminine gender expression, was also a centre for like minds to meet, care and support each other. When fans heard that this amazing lady sadly died at the age of 75 after battling with a stroke that left her hospitalized for a while, fans knew that a legend was gone. Although she didn't have a child, her legacy remained. In our next video, we'll be exploring the life of Lupe Velez, Hollywood's most badass woman, from her tumultuous personal life to her legendary career. This is a story you won't want to miss.